Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt hollow, as if you had to defend yourself, justify something that didn't need defending? Maybe you felt like you were shrinking, explaining your choices, your time, your way of living, only to be met with raised eyebrows, silence, or worse, dismissal. It's a feeling many people experience as they grow older. You say no to something, an invitation, a favor, a tradition you no longer have energy for, and suddenly, you feel the need to explain, as if your life is up for debate, as if choosing peace for yourself is some kind of offense. But here's the truth that many don't tell you. After 60, your time becomes more precious, not less. Your clarity, your preferences, your needs, those are not optional or selfish. They are hard-earned. And constantly explaining them away doesn't make people understand you more. It often just drains your spirit. Let me tell you a story. Helen is 67. She lives alone in a cozy little cottage with a flower garden she tends to every morning. Her daughter, Rebecca, lives 3 hours away and visits twice a year, mostly out of duty. One weekend, Rebecca invited Helen to come stay with her family, but Helen declined. Not because she didn't love them, but because her knees were sore. The drive was long, and she truly just wanted to rest in her own rhythm that weekend. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Helen had said. "Maybe another time. I think I'll stay home this weekend and take care of my roses." And then came the silence on the other end of the phone. The pause that stretched too long. The slight edge in her daughter's voice. "Well, okay. I just thought you'd want to see the kids. But sure, if that's more important." And in that moment, Helen felt that old familiar ache in her chest. So she started explaining, No, it's not that. I do want to see them. It's just that I've been so tired lately." And she heard herself spiraling, trying to make her adult child comfortable with her boundaries, trying to explain her need for rest as if it needed justification. When the call ended, Helen felt small, not because she did anything wrong, but because she felt like she had to prove her right to rest. How many times have you done something similar? You say no to a gathering, and suddenly you feel guilty. You say yes to something with conditions, and you feel the need to soften it with a long explanation. You decide not to lend money or do a favor, and before you even finish your sentence, you're already trying to cushion it, to explain why you're not being mean. But here's the shift I want to invite you into. You are allowed to say no without a paragraph after it. You are allowed to choose quiet, peace, solitude, or joy without wrapping it in justifications. Because the truth is, not everyone will understand your choices. Not everyone will agree with them. But if you spend your energy trying to win their approval, you end up losing something far more valuable. Your own peace. Take Frank, for instance. He's 72 and recently started dating again. After losing his wife 8 years ago, he's finally feeling alive again, meeting a kind woman named Hannah, who makes him laugh and feel young. But his son, Caleb, wasn't thrilled. "You're what? Dating? At your age? Don't you think that's a bit fast?" Frank chuckled when he first heard it, but then he paused. Why did he feel the need to explain himself? Why did he suddenly feel like he had to defend the simple fact that he wanted companionship? He nearly started explaining about the loneliness, about the years of grief, about the emptiness of silent dinners and unshared sunsets. But then he stopped himself. He looked Caleb in the eye and said, softly but clearly, "I understand that it surprises you, but I'm doing what brings me happiness, and I don't need you to agree with it, just to know that it matters to me." That was it. No apology, no unraveling, no performance. And in that small, quiet moment, Frank reclaimed something essential: the right to live his life without begging others to validate it. You see, explaining yourself can become a habit, especially if, like many of us, you've been taught to be polite, to smooth things over, to be easy to love. But politeness that comes at the expense of your truth isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. And over time, it chips away at your spirit. So if you've found yourself lately feeling depleted after every conversation, if you notice you're always the one justifying your plans, your limits, your joys, if you feel that heaviness in your chest after a phone call where you had to explain why you didn't want to host, travel, spend, give, or go, I want you to pause, breathe, and remember, you're allowed to want something different now. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to say no, thank you, and leave it there. Your life doesn't need defending, and your heart doesn't need a permission slip. Sometimes, the most radical form of self-respect is choosing not to explain. Just choosing, and that doesn't make you cold. It makes you grounded. There's something quiet and painful about always being the one to justify your existence. And for many people after 60, that pain shows up not in loud arguments or dramatic betrayals, but in small, subtle ways. A sigh on the phone, a passive comment from a child, a distant tone from someone who used to lean on you more than listen to you. It builds over time. This feeling that somehow you've become the one expected to bend, to explain, to soften your truth, so it doesn't inconvenience someone else's comfort. Let me share something about Margaret. She's 70 now, and for decades, she was everyone's go-to. She planned the holidays. She cooked enough food to feed an army. She ran errands for her children, took care of their kids, and made herself available at the drop of a hat. It gave her life meaning, she thought, until it didn't. One Thanksgiving, she told her family she wouldn't be hosting this year. Her knees had been aching, and she just didn't have the strength. Maybe we can go to a restaurant, she said gently. Or one of you can host, and I'll bring a dish. There was silence on the group chat. Then came the replies. But Thanksgiving doesn't feel the same without your house. Really, you can't just do it one more year. What are we supposed to do now? Margaret sat with her phone in her hand for a long time, staring at those messages. She almost typed out a long explanation about her pain, her fatigue, how hard it's been, almost tried to make them see what they didn't want to see. But then something inside her shifted. She deleted the half-written paragraph and simply wrote, I love you all, but I need to take care of myself this year. I trust we'll still make beautiful memories wherever we are. No over-apologizing, no guilt-tripping, no elaborate defense, just truth, spoken with grace. You see, many of us have learned to be peacekeepers at all costs. We avoid conflict. We smooth edges. We say it's okay when it isn't. But here's the quiet tragedy in that. When you constantly explain, you teach others that your needs are negotiable, and worse, you teach yourself that your needs must be justified to be valid. Frank, the man who had started dating again, once said something that stuck with me. I didn't know how much of my energy I was spending, trying to keep everyone comfortable until I stopped, and suddenly, I had energy to enjoy my life again. That's the shift I want to invite you into. When you stop explaining, you start reclaiming. You reclaim your time, your voice, your space in the world. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or disconnected. It doesn't mean snapping or shutting people out. Quite the opposite. It means learning to speak from a place of calm certainty, not anxiety. It means knowing that your choices don't need to pass through someone else's filter of approval. Let's take another example, Grace. Grace has always been a giver. She's helped her sister financially for years. But after her retirement, things got tighter. She gently told her sister, I can't send money this month. I'm working with a tighter budget now. The response, oh, must be nice to suddenly stop caring. It stung. The words echoed in her heart like a slap. But instead of launching into an explanation about her savings, her bills, her growing need to protect her future, Grace simply said, I've always cared, but I'm learning to care for myself, too. That's all. And in that simple sentence, Grace affirmed something powerful. That care doesn't mean sacrifice to the point of self-neglect. That setting boundaries isn't rejection. It's protection. It's not your job to make others understand your choices. It's your job to honor them. And here's the quiet miracle. When you start doing that, something begins to shift. Not just in how others treat you, but in how you feel inside. You feel lighter. You feel stronger. You begin to stand more firmly in your decisions because they no longer rely on external validation. You stop asking, will they understand? And start asking, is this true to me? That question becomes your compass. Sometimes, when people don't understand your silence or your no or your distance, they'll try to tug at your guilt. They'll say, you've changed, or that's not like you. But growth always feels like betrayal to someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You haven't changed. You're coming home to yourself. You're learning that you don't have to pour from an empty cup, that you don't have to smile through discomfort, that not every why deserves an answer. Some things are just yours. And let me tell you, when you begin to trust that, your presence becomes unshakable. People start to notice a quiet strength in you. They may not always like it, but they begin to respect it, because there is something undeniably powerful about someone who doesn't need to argue their truth, someone who just lives it. There's a moment, quiet and almost imperceptible, when something shifts inside of you, when the weight of needing to be understood starts to fall away, and you begin to breathe a little easier. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. It often happens in the silence after a conversation you chose not to have, a message you decided not to defend, a choice you made and let stand without apology. That's when you start to feel it. Freedom. Helen had been stuck in a loop with her son Ryan for years. Every time she said no to helping him financially, he'd get distant, and she'd chase after that distance, explaining, defending, hoping he'd see her heart, until one day, she didn't. When Ryan texted, "Really, Mom, you know I'm struggling and you won't help." She paused. The familiar ache rose in her chest, that old guilt she'd carried like a second skin. But instead of launching into her usual reply about how she still loved him, about how her pension was limited, about how much she wished she could do more, she typed just 2 words, "I understand," and that was it. She didn't explain, didn't justify. She simply stood in her truth. She later told me, "It was like I finally gave myself permission to not carry his emotions for him. I could love him without fixing him." And that's one of the great awakenings after 60. Realizing you don't need to solve other people's discomfort just to feel worthy of love. You begin to reclaim your time, your choices, and most importantly, your energy, because explaining again and again drains more than your breath. It drains your peace. It dilutes your presence. It keeps you stuck in stories that no longer serve who you are becoming. And you are still becoming. Even now, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Growth doesn't end at retirement. It doesn't end when the children are grown or the house is quiet. It continues in the way you start choosing silence over explanation, presence over performance, dignity over approval. You start realizing that joy doesn't come from making others comfortable. It comes from becoming comfortable with yourself. Frank, who we spoke about earlier, did something beautifully simple after he retired. He stopped attending every family gathering that left him feeling invisible. "I used to go," he said, "because I thought being there was expected of me, even when no one really noticed if I was quiet the whole night. But now, I choose when to go, and when I do, it's because I want to be there. Not because I owe anyone an appearance." And that's the heart of it. When you stop explaining your decisions, you start inhabiting them. They become grounded, calm, whole. People may not always approve, but they begin to sense something new in you. Self-trust. You no longer offer up your inner world for constant scrutiny. You no longer panic when someone doesn't agree with your path. Instead, you pause, breathe, and keep walking. There's a strength in you now that doesn't shout or defend. It simply is, and that kind of strength begins to change the dynamic around you. When Chloe stopped justifying her decision not to babysit every weekend for her grandchildren, something surprising happened. Her daughter, who used to guilt trip her, began to respect her time more. "At first she was upset," Chloe said, "but when I stood firm without anger, just with love and clarity, she adjusted. And now she actually asks me, instead of expecting. It's not always immediate, and not everyone will adjust right away. Some may grow distant, some may push harder, but eventually, when you no longer feed the cycle of guilt, explanation, repentance, it starves, and something new can begin. A relationship based on mutual respect, or at the very least, an inner relationship with yourself that is finally at peace. Because at the end of the day, the person who most needs to understand your decisions is you. Not your adult children, not your siblings, not your neighbors, your church friends, or your old colleagues. If you know your reason, that's enough. And if you ever feel wobbly, uncertain, tempted to defend yourself out of habit, just pause, breathe, place your hand over your heart, and remind yourself, this choice came from love, from self-respect, and I don't need to explain love. The people who are meant to walk with you in this season of life won't demand a defense. They'll see your light, your quiet strength, and they'll walk beside you. Maybe not always in agreement, but in respect, and if they don't, let them walk their path. You've earned the right to walk yours in peace. You've carried enough. You've given enough, and now, it's your time to rest in the truth of who you are. No explanations, no performance, just you steadfast, growing, luminous. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Truly thank you. I know these aren't easy conversations. To sit with truths like these takes courage, and to even begin letting go of the lifelong habit of explaining yourself that takes even more. But if you're still watching, still listening, then something deep inside of you is already ready to shift. Not because someone else said it's time, but because you're tired and you're ready for peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everyone liking you, but the quiet, glowing kind of peace that grows when you like yourself, when you finally choose yourself. If you've ever sat on the edge of your bed at night, wondering why you always feel misunderstood, if you've stared at a message you didn't want to answer and felt that familiar ache in your chest because you knew a no would need a long explanation to avoid judgment, if you've walked away from a family gathering and felt smaller instead of seen, then I want you to know this: you are not alone, and you are not the problem. You are a beautifully complex, deeply loving person who's spent a lifetime giving, showing up, and trying to keep the peace. But now it's your turn to keep peace for yourself. No one tells you this part, that after 60, the truest kind of freedom is emotional. It's not about having more things. It's about letting go of what no longer fits, especially the roles you were forced into. The one who never says no, the one who always explains, the one who fixes everyone else's discomfort while quietly carrying her own. You don't have to do that anymore. You can still love your family deeply. You can still be kind, warm, generous, but now you can do it without constantly explaining yourself, without offering up your soul for negotiation. Let your choices speak for themselves. Let your boundaries whisper the truth of your self-respect. Let your silence, when needed, be louder than any defense. And if someone asks why you're changing, why you're no longer rushing to please or to explain, just smile gently. You don't owe an answer, but if you feel like offering one, let it be something like, because I've started to listen to myself, and that voice matters. 2. That's all. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you feel comfortable, share your story in the comments below. Have you reached a point where you're done explaining yourself? Have there been moments in your life when choosing peace over people-pleasing changed everything? Your story might be the one another person needed to read today. And if this video made you feel seen, if it reminded you of your worth, or gave you even one breath of relief, then I'd be honored if you clicked subscribe. Not because you owe me anything, but because I'd love for us to keep walking this journey together. This space is here for you, a quiet corner in the noise, where you are not invisible, not too much, not too late. You are just right, just in time, just as you are. You don't need to be louder to be heard. You only need to stand gently, firmly, in your light. And if no one's told you lately, you matter. You always have, and now more than ever, your peace matters, too. Until next time, take good care of your heart. It's carried you so far. Now, let it rest in the safety of your own love. I'll see you soon.